Gleich geht's an Bord der Dagmar On. Vorher kommt Werbung. Du liebst das Meer und möchtest es schützen? Dann bist du hier genau richtig. Du kannst sogar Geld damit verdienen. Unsere Meere zu schützen, das treibt auch die Kieler Hazytech Electronics AG an. Sie hat eine umweltfreundliche Lösung gegen Marinenbewuchs und Fouling entwickelt, also gegen den Biofilm, den es am Propeller gibt, am Bug- und Heckstrahlruder und auf allen flüssigkeitsführenden Oberflächen. Die Lösung? AI-gesteuerte Ultraschalltechnologie. Das kommt so gut an, dass Hazytech auf Wachstumskurs ist und neue Mitarbeiterinnen und Mitarbeiter sucht. Und zwar in allen Bereichen. Wissenschaftler, Kaufleute, im Vertrieb, in der Servicetechnik. Da ist sogar weltweite Reisebereitschaft gefragt. In der Softwareentwicklung sowohl Embedded Software als auch Frontend. Und eine Assistenz der technischen Dokumentation wird auch gesucht. Ist was dabei für dich? Weitere Infos gibt's unter www.hazytech.com. Das war Werbung. Jetzt geht's direkt weiter mit dem Arved Fuchs Podcast. Expedition Ocean Change 2021. Mit Arved Fuchs in den nördlichen Nordatlantik. Moin und herzlich willkommen zur 22. Folge unseres Podcasts. Bärbel Fening ist hier. Heute vor 2 Wochen haben Arved und ich in Tampa, Florida, vor vielen Podcastern gesprochen und ihnen erzählt, wie wir diesen Podcast produziert haben. Denn das Besondere ist einfach, dass wir uns nicht von Computer zu Computer zusammengeschaltet haben oder dass wir zusammen in einem Raum saßen, sondern dass Arved sich mit der Dagmar On irgendwo in Island, Grönland oder auf dem Meer befand und dass ich hier in Hamburg am Schreibtisch saß. Und das hat eben auch bei den amerikanischen Podcastern für Aufsehen gesorgt. Und deswegen waren wir eingeladen, dort zu reden. Ein englischer Vortrag. Ich hatte eine Präsentation vorbereitet mit vielen Fotos von der Expedition, mit einem Filmclip, mit Ausschnitten aus verschiedenen Podcast-Folgen, weil es ja eben auch darum geht, den anderen Podcastern zu erzählen, wie wir diesen Podcast produziert haben. Aber natürlich ging es auch darum, wie wir überhaupt die Idee für diesen Podcast hatten. Podcasting in extraordinary places, das war unser Thema. Podcasten an außergewöhnlichen Orten. Und es ging darum, die Podcaster zu motivieren, dass man eigentlich überall podcasten kann. Heute habe ich aus Tampa die Aufzeichnung unseres Vortrags erhalten und ja, jetzt könnt ihr es euch anhören.
There we go. So we're going to talk about podcasting in extraordinary places.
You can see my screen?
Yes, we can. And let's see.
Okay. There we go.
Okay, perfect.
Podcasting in extraordinary places. That's our topic for the next 30 minutes. I'm Bärbel.
And I'm Arved. Hi.
Hi. We want to motivate you. No matter what kind of podcast you are dreaming of, go for it and just do it. Do you see the red arrow? This is where we live, in Hamburg, in Germany. And this is where we produced our podcast during the last months, which sometimes looked like this. Arved Fuchs, my protagonist, was on an expedition in the Arctic in the middle of the icebergs. But first, thank you for having us here. I mean, this is PodFest. Podcasters like Pat Flynn have spoken here, and now it's up to us. Thank you so much. We feel very honored to speak to you. A few sentences about me. I'm a journalist. I work as a freelancer for the German television NDR. And during my studies, I've spent several months in San Francisco and Oakland. I worked at the 10 o'clock news at KTVU with Dennis Richmond and Elaine Corral. And since last year, I'm also a podcaster. I love podcasting because this medium offers so many possibilities. Whereas in Germany, podcasts aren't as popular as they are in the United States. Due to some statistics, 75% of the adults are podcast fans in the United States, whereas in Germany, 38% of the adults listen to a podcast every once in a while. For several years already, I listen to an American podcast, The Daily Boost. But during COVID, I discovered so many interesting podcasts that I decided to start with a podcast of my own. And since my journalistic specialty is the North Sea, I started a North Sea podcast. And since I don't know whether you know where the North Sea is, let's have a look at the map again. Europe, you remember. And in the middle, that's the North Sea. The North Sea belongs to the Wadden Sea, which is World Heritage, just like the Everglades National Park or the Grand Canyon or the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. That's why the North Sea, with its tiny, tiny islands, is one of the favorite holiday destinations in Germany. And so I started the North Sea podcast as a private project. And in every episode, I talk to a person who lives and works at the North Sea, to a crab fisherman, to a captain, to a beach cleaner. Up to now, I have published 70 episodes. And just last week, we reached 100,000 downloads, and the listeners are located in 106 countries. But the magic happened in episode 39, when I interviewed Arved Fuchs. In Germany, Arved Fuchs is a very well-known Arctic lover, pioneer, adventurer who has already been on numerous expeditions. He's the first man on Earth who has been at the North Pole and the South Pole within 1 year, and he's been there by foot. He surrounded Cape Horn in a folding boat, and he crossed Greenland with sled dogs, which took 70 days. During the interview for my podcast, he told me about his childhood when he visited his grandma who lived on a tiny island in the North Sea, and how he was longing for the sea since then. Just to get an impression where Arved has been during his expeditions since he started in 1977, just have a look at the map and all the red lines. His next expedition was to start this summer by the mid of June. And so after our podcast interview, I suggested him, Arved, what do you think? Let's start with a podcast during your expedition. Let's give people around the world the ability to be on board. There we go. Our artwork, Expedition Ocean Change. But before I talk to you about how we produced this podcast, Arved, it's high time to listen to you.
Yeah, once again, hello, everybody. So some people say I'm kind of addicted to ice and to salt water, and I think they are right to a certain extent. So, I grew up with the books about the old polar explorers, and when I was a little boy, I decided to become one of them myself. And so I'm coming from a seafaring family as well. So my grandpa and my uncle, they all became professional seamen. And when I finished school, so it was quite clear for me that I wanted to become a professional seaman myself. And but I always had the longing also for the ice. And so I think it was both the combination of the oceans as well as for the Arctic and the Antarctic as well, of course. And so I started my career just spending a night in a deep freezer and a slaughterhouse just to get some experience with the really cold temperature. But that was just the beginning, and then I moved on to the Canadian Arctic. So the Inuit, they became basically my trainers, my teachers. They taught me all the skills necessary to survive in the Arctic, and I kind of like it. So it was just something that was so intense and so overwhelming. Also, what you experienced, and I love nature, and so I really got into this exploration business, and eventually, so I got my own boat, a sailing vessel. It's used to be a Danish fishing vessel, built 90 years ago. She just turned 90, but she's still going strong. So she's all wood, and so she's not only a vehicle to bring us from A to B. So she became also a very good friend to all of us, not only to me, but also to the crew. And it's an international crew that's sailing the vessel, and it's a combination. So we're sailing the oceans and arriving somewhere in a remote place. We sailed twice through the Northwest Passage, and we sailed through the Northeast Passage and so on. So we overwintered in the ice. And so that's why this boat has become a really, really trustworthy friend, because she saved our life many times. And now we are in the middle of 2 expeditions, because we started, as Bärbel pointed out, in June this summer from Germany, and we were heading towards Iceland and to Greenland. But it was not a pure adventure, so it was a cooperation with scientists, because global warming is something that really is a big concern, not only for me, for everybody. It should be a concern for everybody. But I became somehow a witness of what was going on due to global change in the Arctic. The Arctic is warming up nearly 3 times as fast as the rest of the world. And it's like an early warning system of nature. And so I decided to do something for the nature, so to pay something back, because the nature gave me so much in my life, and I just became kind of an environmentalist and trying to cooperate with scientists and to collect data. And right now the boat is overwintering in Iceland. Originally, we had planned to overwinter in Canada, but due to COVID, that was not possible. So we pulled back, and the boat is there, and we will keep going on in summer next year. So, and some crew members is taking care of the boat, and so that's the situation right now. And the podcast was something when Bärbel approached me and told me about the podcast. I like podcasts myself, but I was, to be quite honest, I had my doubts whether it would be possible from the technical point of view, because where we go, there's no internet access, and the satellites are very slow and extremely expensive. So I had my doubts whether it would be feasible if we could really do it. And it was easy to start in the port of Flensburg in the northern part of Germany, in the harbor, and nice summer weather. So we had internet access, of course. But once we were at sea, so we would not have internet access. And even in some of these remote places in Greenland, you might have internet in some of the small villages, but it's, again, very slow, and you can't really do a podcast. So it was just quite a struggle sometimes. But I'm just very thankful, and it was just very well done from Bärbel to make it come true. And I think we just finished our 20th podcast, Bärbel, and we will keep doing it and keep going on. And although it's, of course, not on a regular scale, so because we have to accept that we have no internet access in some of these places, but we will keep going.
Our plan was that we would publish 1 episode in each port Arved reached with the Dagmar on. And so, as Arved said, we would publish the episodes irregularly, and that's why we recommended subscribing this podcast so that the listeners won't miss any episode. But Arved has told so much about his destinations, about the Arctic and the Antarctic. And now we have prepared a short film for you just to see where he has been and where we produced our episodes. And you can listen to our intro and outro music and to Arved.
Yeah, this is the Dagmar, our trustworthy vessel, and this is on the east coast of Greenland. Lots of icebergs floating around, and you really have to take care not hitting one piece of ice. Although it's a strong and stout vessel, but it's always kind of dangerous as well. But this area is affected by the climate change in a dramatic way. And where we are sailing, there used to be sea ice, and it's gone because the temperature of the ocean has increased so much. And we are collecting all kind of data. We are cooperating with a scientific institute in Kiel called GEOMA. And we are not scientists ourselves, but we are collecting data, and the scientists call these kinds of boat ships of opportunity. And so that's what we are doing, basically. So we are sailing in very remote areas and collecting data for scientific institutes.
Es folgt Werbung. 12 deutsche Forschungsschiffe gibt es. 8 davon werden von einer Reederei bei uns aus dem Norden bereedert. Von der Reederei Brise aus Leer aus Friesland. Brise Research stellt die Crew an Bord der Forschungsschiffe, das sind gut 250 Seeleute, und kümmert sich weltweit um die ganze Logistik, die erforderlich ist, damit die Crews und auch die vielen Wissenschaftlerinnen und Wissenschaftler, wo auch immer sie sind, tipptopp versorgt sind. Super spannend, was die Reederei Brise macht. Meeresforschung ist gerade wichtig wie nie. Ein Arbeitsplatz auf einem Forschungsschiff ist eine sichere Sache. Die Reederei Brise sucht gerade Mitarbeiterinnen und Mitarbeiter an Bord. Sie bildet auch aus. Übrigens ist die Bordsprache Deutsch. Guck dir das einfach mal an. www.brise.de. Das war Werbung. Jetzt geht's weiter mit Arved Fuchs an Bord der Dagmar On. And we are producing podcasts in very remote areas, and we have listeners around the world. In a way, we can say we just did it.
Yeah, that's the great thing, Bärbel. And so it was your idea, and you make it come true. So really great. Well done.
And it worked out fairly well. We have published 20 episodes so far, and we have 71,500 downloads, and our listeners are in 54 countries around the world. And we have reached these numbers within 5 months. So let's have a closer look at the route Arved took with this ship. Where the little white rectangles are, that are the points where we published an episode. Here we have an overview. And in the episodes, we talked about the last stage. We talked about the nutrition, about Arved's experience, about the mood on board, about nature, about the scientific work, and so on. There are so many topics to talk about. But how did we produce this podcast? So let's go to the details. Our podcast host is Buzzsprout, which is very, very easy going and very intuitive to handle. And so it looked like this. I was sitting at my desk where I sit right now, and Arved was somewhere between the icebergs on his boat on the Dagmar On, or at one point you've been at a bar in Iceland, I remember, Arved. And for me at home at my computer, it looked like this. You can record audio and video. The only condition is you need to have internet. At one point where Arved didn't have any internet at all, we even recorded an episode with a satellite telephone because we didn't want to lose our listeners. And so that was, one episode. Normally, we recorded video and audio, although for the podcast, I only used the audio file. But with the video recording, I edited small snippets, which I used to promote the new episode on Facebook, where Arved has many, many followers. And so let's listen to a snippet. And it's mainly the introduction when I asked Arved about the last stage. Ja. Moin Arved, ihr seid in Husavik angekommen. Wie war denn die letzte Etappe?
Ja, moin Bärbel. Ach, die letzte Etappe, die war eigentlich ganz entspannt, muss ich sagen.
Very short snippet. The audio quality, as you see, is perfect. Arved is using an iPhone and headsets, and then it's no problem at all. Uploading data can take a while, as Arved already mentioned, depending on the internet and on the length of the episode. So we tried not to be longer than 10 minutes, which not always worked out. It's possible to connect up to 8 people in an episode. So once we had an interview with 3 of us, which worked out very fine. Let's just listen to some seconds.
Was waren denn deine härtesten Minusgrade und wie fühlt sich das an?
Ja, du hast mir ja auch netterweise Bilder von eurer Produktion geschickt und die habe ich auch mit großer Freude heute Morgen in der Crew herumgezeigt. Ja, also das Kälteste, was ich mal erlebt habe, sind minus 60 Grad in Sibirien.
At that point, Arved was sitting in Greenland, and the guy on the right, the frontman of a famous German band who supports Arved, and me, we were at different cities in Germany. And it's an atmosphere as if we were all sitting around one table, having fun and talking about Arved's coldest situations he has experienced. By the way, it was minus 76 grad Fahrenheit. So let's go back to Arved. Arved, your experience as a new podcaster.
Well, yeah, I had not really experience. I made 1 or 2 podcasts before we left. And so during this expedition, it was quite a challenge. So to be there on time and to find an internet access. So it worked out, actually.
Yes, it worked out, and we had contact via WhatsApp. So Arved told me, I'm in the port. I have found some location where I have internet, and then we recorded a new episode. But okay, we had to find a slot for this. Yes.
Yes, so it was mainly I tried to do it really from the boat because that's part of the expedition. It's much better to do it there than from some kind of hotel room or whatever. And so we always had some new stories to tell because we were moving from one place to the other, and we just had new experiences which we wanted to share with Bärbel and the audience, actually. So it was interesting to be in contact via podcast with the rest of the world, basically. Yes.
Yes. And finally, we have a last look ahead. During winter times, we will talk about Arved's experience now, about his former expeditions. And next year, it's all about planning the next stages of the expedition Ocean Change 22, because we don't want to lose our audience, and climate change is such a big issue. So we won't stop podcasting on this.
Yeah, and I think there are many things to tell because Ocean Change is an ongoing expedition, and so we will be out again in the Arctic on the oceans, and I'm not quite sure where we're going to go next, but Iceland is a good starting point because you can go to any direction. Iceland is an island in the middle of the North Atlantic, and so you have all options at hand, and also the scientific institutes are really interested in it. So we are really looking forward to it, and the boat has to be maintained by the shipyard, but that could be all done in Iceland, and we are basically ready to go for a next trip.
Yeah. So if you are interested, if you want to get in touch to us, feel free to reach out to us. Just take a screenshot, and then it's up to you. Podcasting is possible anywhere. The only limits are in your brain. So the sky is the limit. Just go and keep podcasting or start podcasting. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much.
That was so wonderful. Wow, I'm just so impressed. And Arved, thank you so much for making time to join us today. Bärbel, thank you for bringing this to our attention. I heard the podcast and was just totally blown away and thought, what a great opportunity to bring folks on here who's doing something that's totally out of what the box that I think in, which is, my closet. Where I podcast from is our closet. Then we moved all the way to the bedroom, which was a big expedition in and of itself. But I just love this. And I love the way that you have found a way to continue on, even while Arved is not out sailing right now.
Yes, because it's so important to to publish new episodes kind of regularly, because otherwise the audience is gone. And then we can start at 0.0 next year. And that's what we don't want to do.
Right. Did everybody get the screenshot of Bärbel's socials and Arved's socials? If not, we'll do it really fast and we can get a screenshot and then we'll start. There we go. So make sure you take a screenshot of that. Follow them for sure on Instagram. I know I'm going to be, because I'm just fascinated. I will honestly also tell you that my 22-year-old son was walking through the room when this started, and I said, "Come here and sit down and watch this." And he was like, "Wow, that's really cool." So he jumped up before the camera came back on, but he's like, "That's really awesome." So I just wanted to let you know. See, touches all ages and stages. So if you guys want to stop sharing, Barbara, if you want to stop sharing your screen, so we all you. I love that. And also I wanted to point out, and I think this was a great idea that Bärbel, you explained and you suggested to people, because your podcast cannot be consistent because of just the actual process of the environment and what you guys are doing, is that you embraced your inconsistency and said, look, we're going to do the best that we can. But so if you guys subscribe to the podcast, then you make sure that you won't miss anything. I am blown away by the numbers that you guys have reached in the 5 months, but I'm not surprised in the sense that this sounds so amazing. And I wish I spoke German, as we were talking in the chat, like, oh man, this isn't in English. I mean, we're so, stubborn about the fact that of course it should be in English, but I will have to try and listen. But I think that, that was such a great idea. And you're just letting your listeners know straight up front, we're not pulling any punches, but there's only so much that we can do. And I love that idea.
Arvid, we should consider talking in English next year during the next expedition.
You may want to actually. I mean, gosh, think about, James Cridland just did a big, huge thing about English speaking people around the world and what countries have the largest numbers of English speaking people. Sorry, I can't get that out. And it was fascinating. Yeah. James Cridland did that presentation yesterday. So, or maybe even just some episodes or something, because I think it would be so interesting to hear, Arvid, especially your experience, and you are hands-on. You're seeing that the ice is not there anymore, and whether people believe in climate change or not, the fact is things that were there talk about how to help our Earth, our planet, to make it better. I love that.
I think for authenticity, you have to do it in German.
Yeah.
Right. And then of course you can always your English is phenomenally, you're fluent. So you could always go back and do a recording or at least do some type of transcript or something so people can read it and such as they go along. But yes, absolutely. That it's a phenomenal, it's an amazing story, but it's an amazing reality. And you're reaching so many people and it's so important. It's such an important thing to let people know it's real. It's happening. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much for sharing your experience.
Yes, thank you very much for having us here.
Thank you both so much for being here. I know it is, it's evening time, about time for dinner and probably a nice drink or two.
It's PM. It's fine. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Have a good glass of wine or a beer or something. Wonderful.
Okay, let's celebrate.
Thank you so much for being here. Please, everybody, make sure that you do follow both Arvid and Bärbel on Instagram or whatever podcast or whatever platform you use. And then definitely at least subscribe to their podcast. But that's an amazing thing. All of those things help, as we all know, even if you can't understand all of it, have a subscriber. That will help them, and that will help them get some funding. And that will be great for all of us, because it's all about producing and for pushing the podcast movement forward. And you guys have found an amazing way. As my 22-year-old son just said, like, that's amazing that they can do this. I'm like, yeah, you couldn't do that with a TV crew and stuff that would have cost just $1 billion. Arvid standing there with an iPhone and earbuds, and Bärbel's got her equipment on the other side, and that's it. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. So thank you so much for sharing your amazing story with us and your amazing adventures. And Arvid, we can't wait to hear all more about it next year.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Der letzte Satz fällt mir jetzt gerade erst auf. Heißt das, dass wir nächstes Jahr wieder bei PodFest reden? Das war Wendy Brand, die Veranstaltung moderiert hat an dem Tag. Mit der hatte ich auch im Vorfeld immer diese ganzen Tech-Checks. Und naja, vielleicht meint Wendy auch, dass wir unseren Podcast ja auf Englisch produzieren und dass sie ihn abonniert. Das werden wir auf jeden Fall machen. Darüber haben Arved und ich jetzt schon häufiger gesprochen. Aber für euch produzieren wir ihn natürlich auch weiter auf Deutsch. Ab der kommenden Folge geht's wieder um Arved, um das, was er bei seinen Expeditionen erlebt hat, um das, was er für die kommende Expedition plant, um seine Vorträge. Dieser Mann hat einfach so viel zu erzählen. Denkt dran, kurz eine gute Bewertung bei Apple Podcasts zu hinterlassen und dann freue ich mich darauf, wenn wir uns hier bald wieder hören.